Welcome to Bedtime Whisper. I'm Thomas, your host tonight, wherever you're tuning in from. Whether you're winding down, drifting off, or just in need of something soft to carry you into sleep, I'm really glad you're here. Tonight, we slip off our sandals, wrap ourselves in a whisper-thin toga, and wander into the warm, echoing embrace of a Roman bathhouse. You're in the heart of the empire, maybe Ostia, maybe even Rome itself. On a day not so different from any other, there's the familiar hiss of steam, the slosh of water in stone basins, and the low rumble of conversation carried through tiled halls. Marble floors gleam with damp footprints. Somewhere, someone drops a strigil with a clatter. You're not late, but you're also definitely not early. Already, you can smell the bathhouse. Warm mineral water, olive oil, faint incense, and just a trace of what died in the drains last week. You've brought your coin pouch, a tunic you don't mind losing, and your sense of decorum, which may or may not survive the Tepidarium. Bathhouses, or thermi, were the great equalizers of Roman daily life. Rich or poor, soldier or senator, everyone craved a good soak. Historians still argue whether the real draw was hygiene, socializing, or just avoiding your in-laws for a few hours. Probably a bit of all three. And here's your cheeky reality check. Whatever relaxing image you have of bathing, be ready to toss it out with the bathwater. This was less spa day, more sweaty public gym meets open-air office meets snack bar, but somehow it worked, and it worked for centuries. Before we go any further, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying your historical, slow drift into sleep. And if you'd like, let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the empire. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey together. You start outside. The entrance to the bathhouse looms with faded frescoes and a tiled mosaic underfoot depicting Neptune riding dolphins who look suspiciously like overcooked parsnips. A line of citizens shifts idly, half-heartedly arguing about who skipped whom. A boy sells oil flasks with a grin far too wide for someone who definitely stole them. Once inside, you're met with a strange hush. Odd, given the number of people. The sound here is strange, softened by steam and stone. Voices echo like dreams. Lanterns flicker along the vaulted ceiling. Somewhere in the distance, someone is singing badly in Greek. The entry fee is minimal. A single quadrans, a bronze coin, so small you wonder how it hasn't simply dissolved into myth. There's no receipt, just a nod from the balneater, the manager, who looks like he hasn't smiled since Trajan's last haircut. You pass under a carved archway, bearing a Latin inscription, something about virtue and cleanliness, and not slipping. No one reads it. They're too busy trying not to fall on the eternally damp floor tiles, which offer about as much grip as an eel in olive oil. And then, you're in. The air hits you immediately. Thick, wet, warm, like walking into the breath of a lazy giant. Everything glistens. Marble walls drip with condensation. The floors are mosaics, so detailed you feel guilty stepping on them. One depicts a sea nymph feeding grapes to a lion, which raises several zoological questions. The crowd is lively, but not chaotic. A group of young men passes by, loudly debating gladiator rankings as if discussing fantasy football. An older gentleman sits on a bench by the wall, meticulously oiling his arms with the kind of dedication usually reserved for philosophers and pigeons. Nearby, a pair of toddlers splash in a shallow basin while their mothers attempt to discuss dowries over the squealing. This isn't just bathing. This is the Roman idea of wellness, a kind of physical and social purification. You don't come here to be alone. You come to be seen, to gossip, to catch up, to pick up that juicy rumor about the senator's daughter and the Greek tutor with suspiciously nice hair. Still, despite the hum of activity, there's a rhythm to the place, an unspoken choreography of movement from chamber to chamber, warm to hot to cold, with stops for scraping, oiling, arguing, eating, and, if you're very lucky, napping on a sun-warmed bench. You move toward the changing area, the Apoditarium, the next step in your journey. But even before you reach it, you pass murals and sculptures that could easily detain you for hours. One wall shows Hercules inventing bathing, which historians still argue whether the myth is satire, propaganda, or some lost joke. Another sculpture features Venus delicately holding a strigil, looking as if she's never actually used one, but definitely endorses the brand. And yes, you're starting to sweat already. Not from exertion, just from being here. It's a place designed to make you leak from every pore in your body until you emerge a cleaner, soggier, more socially connected version of yourself. But don't worry, you're just getting started as you wander past a man trying to talk philosophy with a goatish patience, his audience clearly regretting making eye contact. You take in the smell of scented oil and realize something else. Despite the crowds, despite the humidity, this place is oddly peaceful. Maybe it's the sound of splashing water. Maybe it's the way people speak in half whispers, like they're in a sacred temple of heat and gossip. Or maybe it's because no one can argue too loudly when they're wearing nothing but sandals and self-confidence. You find a free bench and sit, heart gently thudding from the warmth. You've made it inside, and already the outside world, its debts, its chores, its chariot traffic, feels like a blurry dream. The bathhouse doors are now behind you, and ahead, an entire world of oily rituals, hot surprises, freezing decisions, philosophical nonsense, and maybe a mild skin rash or two. Let's keep going. Now that you've soaked in the initial ambiance, you step into the Apoditarium, the changing room, which is, to put it gently, not the most organized place in the empire. Picture a vaulted space of stone benches and deep wall cubbies, a few chaotic hooks here and there. There's a general attempt at order, like someone once had a system, but centuries of toga tossing have reduced it to mayhem. Men of all shapes and social ranks disrobe with theatrical nonchalance, discussing olive prices while stepping out of tunics that were never flattering in the first place. You find an open spot on a worn bench and begin the delicate dance of undressing in public without looking like you care. Beside you, a centurion loudly compares muscle tone with a baker who, it must be said, is holding his own. A boy runs past, laughing, wearing nothing but a bronze oil flask on a string. That's a bold fashion choice, even for Rome. As you fold your clothes, okay, you mostly crumple them, You eye the storage cubbies. They're communal, unlabeled, and watched over by a capsarius, a young attendant who's supposed to guard belongings. He looks about 12 years old and deeply engrossed in a game of knucklebones. You hesitate, wondering if your coin pouch will be there when you return. Historians still argue whether theft in bathhouses was epidemic or just part of the ambiance. Either way, you slide your satchel into a slot and silently promise to blame Mercury, god of thieves, if anything goes missing. A strange camaraderie exists here, forged in awkward nudity and shared towels. You make small talk with a man whose job is official fish inspector for the city. He tells you proudly that he once fined a senator for mislabeling an eel. You nod with what you hope is respectful enthusiasm. Over in one corner, two older bathers are deep in a debate about whether Emperor Hadrian has grown too fond of Greek culture. One of them quotes Homer. The other responds by flexing his biceps and asking if Homer ever built aqueducts. The argument ends in laughter, then a synchronized back scratch with wooden strigils. You notice a few patrons applying oil even before they hit the steam rooms. This is part of the ritual. Olive oil is the body wash, moisturizer, and social signal of the day. Thick, fragrant, and poured liberally, it will soon be scraped off, along with a good layer of dignity. Your own oil flask is modest, copper, dented, slightly leaky. The man next to you has one shaped like a dolphin that emits a high-pitched whistle every time he tips it. No one comments. This is Rome. You've seen weirder. As you finish undressing, you feel the bathhouse beginning to change you. Not just the heat, not just the nudity, but the peculiar leveling effect. Outside these walls, class and rank rule everything. Inside, you're just another slightly damp human being, trying to keep your towel from unraveling. Suddenly, a commotion. A merchant is arguing with the capsarius, gesturing toward his empty cubby and muttering about divine punishment. The boy shrugs, clearly rehearsed in the art of not caring. The merchant huffs and storms off in dramatic indignation, one sandal on, the other missing. You make a mental note to keep expectations low for your own retrieval later. In a far corner, a pair of teenage boys try and fail to balance on one leg while twirling their towels. Their laughter echoes off the walls, and for a moment, the room feels more like a family reunion than a grooming facility. There is a long mirror set into a marble slab, polished so finely it reflects like water. You catch your own reflection, flushed, glistening, vaguely confused. It's okay. That's the proper look for a first-timer. Even repeat bathers often look like they're wondering if this is what Cicero had in mind when he said, if you have a garden and a library, you have everything you need. Just as you finish oiling your arms, an attendant rings a small bell. Time to move forward. Patrons begin filing toward the palaestra and Tepidarium. You join them, sliding your sandals back on, and try to walk confidently. This is trickier than it sounds, as marble and oil are not natural friends. As you pass through the archway, you overhear a teenager whispering a love confession to a girl via the medium of a borrowed strigil. She responds by laughing and smacking him lightly with it. It's all very romantic, in a kind of slippery, medieval way. Now and then, someone returns to the Apoditarium to grab something they forgot. A towel, a brush, their sense of modesty. The room breathes in and out like a lung, always half full, never quiet. Historians still argue whether Roman bathhouses were primarily functional or symbolic. Did people come mainly to cleanse the body, or to display, socialize, and perform wellness as a kind of civic duty? From where you're standing, half oiled and one towel away from a wardrobe malfunction, it's hard to say. But what's certain is that the changing room sets the tone. It's the threshold, the transition from the outside world to this steamy microcosm of Roman society. You step out of your clothes, and with them, your everyday burdens. Here, you're not a baker or a banker, a slave or a senator. You're just one more person slipping your way toward serenity, hoping to exit slightly cleaner than you entered, and maybe, if you're lucky, with all your belongings still intact. From the changing room, you shuffle toward the Strigil station, a gloriously slippery corridor where the true art of Roman bathing begins, not with soap, but with oil and scraping. This is not a private affair. You are now part of a line of glistening, olive-oiled citizens, waiting your turn at the hands of men who wield curved metal blades with cheerful aggression. These are the unctors, the oilers, and their tools of choice, the strigils, look like something between a sickle and a shoehorn. You're not entirely sure if you're about to be cleansed or turned into carpaccio. You watch as a bald merchant is vigorously scraped down, oil flying off him like a citrus-glazed duck being prepped for roasting. He grunts approvingly. Good for the joints, he mutters, though whether he means the strigil or the unctor's elbow in his ribcage is unclear. Your turn. The unctor nods at you, dips his hands into a clay vessel of warmed oil, heavily scented with crushed herbs, possibly mint or thyme, and begins to lather your arms and shoulders. The sensation is strange, comforting, but slightly ticklish. A child nearby giggles as his oiling is interrupted by a rogue pigeon swooping through the chamber. The unctor doesn't flinch, just keeps working the oil into your skin with practiced swirls, as though you're a particularly nervous piece of bread dough. The scraping begins. The strigil glides along your back, pulling away a thin film of oil, sweat, and whatever dust the Roman streets have left behind. It's oddly satisfying, the way peeling a boiled egg is satisfying. If the egg had opinions and tight calves, the strigil squeaks slightly. You wonder if it's supposed to do that. Historians still argue whether this method was actually effective at cleaning, or whether it just redistributed dirt in elegant, aromatic streaks. Whatever the case, you already feel lighter, shinier, possibly more aerodynamic. The process is rhythmic. Scrape, wipe, scrape, wipe. Your unctor hums a tune under his breath, something that sounds vaguely like a lullaby and vaguely like a threat. You don't ask questions. You're far too relaxed to care. Next to you, a senator is receiving what can only be described as a deluxe treatment, a double oiling, followed by strigil strokes, so meticulous they seem to outline his ambitions. You catch a glimpse of his oiled chest hair arranged in surprisingly symmetrical waves. He tips well, someone whispers. Your own treatment is brisk, but respectful. The unctor even pauses to clean your strigil with a cloth before running it along your legs. You walk a lot, he notes, pointing to your calves. You nod. You definitely walked here, after all. Behind you, someone tries to tip their unctor with a poem instead of coins. The man listens politely, then hands him an extra rough scrape across the spine. That's for the metaphor, he says dryly. Elsewhere, a group of young athletes trade strigil techniques, like gladiators, comparing swords. One of them insists the best way is to go against the oil grain. Another swears by short, overlapping scrapes. A third doesn't care, because he's clearly just here for the social perks. It's around this moment that you spot something strange in a nearby corner. A strigil carved entirely from bone. Ivory, perhaps? It gleams oddly under the lantern. Light. The unctor using it wears an air of mystery. Imported, he says when asked. From Britannia, or maybe Gaul. The client likes to think it's exotic. The bone strigil's owner, a woman reclining with imperious ease, wears a necklace made of seashells and a look that says she will absolutely judge your posture. Meanwhile, your own unctor is now working the last of the oil from your ankles, then taps you gently on the shoulder. You're done. He hands you a rough linen cloth for any bits the strigil missed. You wipe yourself down, still gleaming slightly, but now less like a salad dressing accident and more like a polished statue. You thank him. He nods. His next client is already stepping forward, arms spread in oily surrender. You step aside and rejoin the flow of bathers, heading toward the Tepidarium. The air shifts again, thicker, warmer. You're glowing now, not metaphorically, actually glowing. Your skin feels awake, your joints loosened, your muscles humming with the memory of pressure and friction. And yet, beneath the smoothness, you're aware of something else. A lingering, subtle soreness in your back, where the strigil caught a knot. You wonder, not for the first time, if the oil was slightly abrasive. Perhaps a bit of sand was mixed in, an old Roman exfoliation trick. Historians still debate the ingredients of oil blends in bathhouses, from herbs to ash to crushed pearl. Maybe you've just experienced the luxury of a senator or the prank of a mischievous apprentice. Either way, you feel transformed, a little ridiculous, a little radiant. You pass a sign etched into a slab of stone. Kneel, molestes in Caldario. Roughly, do not annoy others in the hot room. An optimistic rule, but one that suggests things have definitely gotten heated in the past. You're not there yet. First, the Tepidarium, the warm room, the room that bridges the scraping and the sweating, a place of stories, secrets, and very, very open pores. And as you step into its misty embrace, still slick with oil and pride, you realize this is only the beginning. The Tepidarium welcomes you like a polite but firm hug, a room of warmth that doesn't immediately slap you with heat, but rather invites you to settle in, breathe deeply, and begin the slow process of cooking from the inside out. It's quieter. Here, gone, is the clang of strigils and the shouting of misplaced sandals. The air is thick, scented faintly with eucalyptus, or maybe bay leaves, a haze floats lazily around the vaulted ceiling, where sunlight streams through thin slits in the stone, catching in the mist and giving everything a golden, dreamlike glow. You find a seat along a heated marble bench, already shiny from dozens of previous sitters. The warmth seeps into your back. Your thighs make that faint sticking sound as they meet the stone. There's no dignified way around it. Across from you, a man with a poet's beard and a merchant's belly is snoring gently, his head bobbing with the rhythm of someone who has fully embraced the spa lifestyle. To your left, a group of older women lounge in togas, so sheer they might as well be fog. They sip lightly spiced wine from squat clay cups and gossip about the governor's new wife. Apparently, she can't tell a Thracian urn from a chamber pot. A disaster, one of them whispers, eyes sparkling. You lean back and exhale. The room smells faintly of cedar and yesterday's ambition. It's hard to remember that just an hour ago you were elbowing past goats in the street. Now, all that exists is this warm, humming silence. A bath attendant glides by with a bronze pitcher, sprinkling water onto heated tiles with a practiced flick. The resulting hiss is oddly satisfying. The floor steams in elegant swirls. A small boy chases the shapes with his fingers, giggling until a nearby senator shoots him a look that could curdle cheese. This is the bathhouse's version of foreplay. The Tepidarium is meant to open you up, to soften the body and mind. And it works. You feel your shoulders droop, your jaw unclench, even your knees seem to sigh. You overhear a quiet conversation between two men discussing naval trade routes. One references a new type of amphora designed to resist barnacle buildup. The other counters with a story about a shipment of fish sauce that leaked across half the port and led to the Great Stench Incident of 132 CE. They still call that Doc Porta Piscis Inferni, he says with a chuckle. Historians still debate the role of the Tepidarium. Was it merely transitional? A hallway with heat? Or was it a kind of thermal purgatory, where Romans lingered to socialize without the commitment of the hotter rooms? The answer, as always, is probably yes. Near you, a man rolls a small carved ball beneath his feet, a primitive massage tool made of bone and surprisingly effective. You nod appreciatively. He grins. Came from Numidia, he says, as if explaining a rare breed of hunting dog. You refrain from mentioning you've seen a similar item sold near the Forum as a stress relief hedgehog. In one corner, a mosaic mural catches your eye. Neptune riding dolphins, his beard wild, his trident casually skewering a sea monster who looks more surprised than angry. The craftsmanship is excellent. Tiny tesserae, fitted so closely it feels like painting. You can almost hear the splash of waves. A group of teenagers enter noisily, clearly skipping their philosophy lecture. One wears a laurel crown made of what appears to be dandelions. They tease each other about upcoming poetry exams and who accidentally addressed their instructor as mater instead of magister. You smile. Even in ancient Rome, foot and mouth disease thrives. And then slowly, the noise softens again. The warmth does that. Voices drop, posture loosens, and the room lapses into what might be the most beautiful of Roman inventions. Shared silence. Your skin glows faintly in the light. The oil is still present, but has mostly been absorbed or steamed away. You feel more like yourself than you did before entering, and somehow also more like a marble statue. You wonder if that was the point all along. You take a sip of water from a clay cup offered by a passing attendant. It's cool, touched with mint. For a brief moment, you consider that if someone invented a service where you pay to just sit in a warm room, doing nothing for hours on end, it might be oddly popular. In the future, you lean back again. You let the warmth do its job. You watch as steam collects along the lip of a high arch, then drips, plop, onto the stone floor below. This room doesn't ask much of you, just that you breathe slowly and remember what it feels like to exist in your body without expectation. Just when you're about to nod off, someone gently taps your shoulder. An attendant points toward the next room. The Caldarium awaits, the hottest of the chambers, the main event. And so, with a last look at Neptune and his bemused monster, you rise, limbs warm and loose. You step out of the Tepidarium like a slow-cooked loaf of bread emerging from its pan, ready for the real heat. You cross the threshold into the Caldarium, and the change is immediate. The air here doesn't gently envelop you. It pounces. A dense, humid wave of heat smacks you square in the pores. It's like stepping into the lungs of a dragon who just finished a eucalyptus lozenge. Your vision clouds for a moment. The steam is everywhere, rising from the heated floors, billowing off the surface of the plunge pool, curling around naked limbs like toga-shaped ghosts. It's a glorious sauna meets a ghost story. The floor is hot enough to make you wince. You do that little hop-step walk everyone does in here, trying not to look like your feet are turning into roasted chestnuts. Eventually, you make it to the nearest marble bench. It's warm, slippery, and blessedly not occupied by a man telling the entire room about his gout. You take a seat, or rather, you slide gently into a seated position, because in the Caldarium, friction is a theory. Every surface has been polished by centuries of bathers and sweat, and today, you're helping continue that noble tradition. The heat begins its slow infiltration. You can feel it working its way into your joints, into the backs of your knees, into your thoughts. Your skin begins to shine again, not with oil this time, but with effort. You're sweating in places you didn't know had sweat glands. To your right, a woman reclines against the wall like a lounging sphinx. Dabbing her brow with a sponge attached to a stick, she sees your curious glance and holds it up. From Alexandria, she says, sea sponge. They say it once filtered water for Cleopatra's koi. You suspect she's embellishing, but the sponge is impressive. Nearby, a man mutters a quiet mantra while pouring ladlefuls of hot water over his arms. A robe embroidered with laurels is neatly folded beside him. You assume he's someone important, but in the Caldarium, everyone is equally boiled. A young couple whispers conspiratorially in the corner, barely audible over the gentle hissing of steam and dripping condensation. You catch a few words. Something about an overcooked dormouse and a stolen recipe. Even in this haze of heat, the politics of dinner parties simmer on. Above you, the dome-shaped ceiling curves like the belly of a Roman god. Small oculi, those circular skylights, dot its surface, letting in beams of light that cut through the fog like theater spotlights. You half expect Jupiter to descend and comment on your posture. Someone sneezes. It echoes dramatically. Historians still argue whether the caldarium's humidity was intended primarily for health, hygiene, or pure indulgence. What's certain is that Roman doctors often prescribed bathing for ailments ranging from melancholy to joint stiffness, too amusingly, too much philosophy. Perhaps you're here for all three. A man in his 40s, lank hair, impressive eyebrows, begins reciting Horace from memory, likely trying to impress a listener who has long since fallen asleep. You can't help but smile. There's something soothing about ancient poetry mixed with the subtle slosh of water against stone. The bath attendant approaches, this time with a bucket of water and a long-handled ladle. He gestures to your shoulders and pours it slowly down your spine. You twitch, then melt. The heat is so intense that it somehow loops back around into comfort. Your muscles sigh. You briefly consider writing the man into your will. You dab at your face with a linen cloth, which now resembles a deflated ravioli. Across the room, two young men compete to see who can stay closest to the heated wall the longest. One wins, but only by sacrificing 3 layers of skin. There's a small heated plunge pool here, not quite big enough to swim in, but ideal for leaning against and pretending you're being gently poached. You slip into it. The sensation is like lowering yourself into a hot cup of mulled wine. You half expect someone to toss in cloves and orange peel. Underwater, the world dulls to a hum. You stay there for a moment, silent, suspended, and soft. Around the edges, this must be what figs feel like when they're stewed. When you surface, blinking and pink-cheeked, an older man hands you a small ball of waxy paste. Try this, he says. Myrrh and pine resin. Good for the lungs. You nod, uncertain whether to eat it or sniff it. You opt for a polite sniff. It smells like a monastery in winter. As you recline once more on the stone ledge, your mind drifts to strange facts you've heard. Emperor Caracalla once had an entire caldarium replicated in his mobile military camp. Others say the Emperor Elagabalus added saffron to the water so his skin would smell like divine sunshine. You doubt the latter worked, but you admire the commitment. Someone tries to perform a handstand near the plunge pool and is promptly scolded by an elderly woman wielding a cane and the moral authority of a retired Vestal virgin. You feel your thoughts loosen. Language slows. Your limbs are so pliable now that you briefly wonder if you've become soup, and yet a part of you resists moving on. This room feels final, the climax of heat and steam and shared absurdity. But you know what's next. The part your body doesn't yet know it's craving. Cold. The Frigidarium lies ahead. The chill. The plunge. The Roman reboot button. You steal yourself. You rise slowly, dripping like a stew left too long on the boil. It's time. You step out of the caldarium like a roast exiting the oven. Warm, glazed, and slightly delirious. The air beyond hits you like a crisp slap of citrus. Goosebumps rise in an instant. Your pores slam shut, and somewhere deep inside your spine, a tiny, forgotten nerve screams in surprise. Welcome to the Frigidarium. Rome's version of a wake-up call in marble and ice. The room is still grand, but noticeably quieter. No steam here, no haze of conversation. The air is sharp, echoing. Every step echoes faintly on the cool tiles. Light filters in from a high window, pale and clean, like morning after a storm. You feel like you've wandered into a different temple entirely, one where the gods of heat have been banished, and then there it is, the cold plunge pool, a wide rectangle of impossibly clear water, sunk into the stone floor. A few brave souls are already in, either clinging to the edge like frozen noodles, or floating stiffly with the expressions of people deeply questioning their life choices. You stand at the edge, staring into it. The surface barely ripples. A nearby attendant raises an eyebrow. You going in or composing an ode about it? He asks, not unkindly. You nod, muster every last scrap of courage that hasn't evaporated in the caldarium, and step in. It is not merely cold, it is betrayal in liquid form. The water grabs your ankles, races up your spine, and slaps your lungs shut. For a moment, you're sure your soul has left your body, possibly to file a complaint with Jupiter. But then comes the bloom. The shock gives way to exhilaration. Your skin tightens. Your mind clears. You're no longer a melting candle. You're a marble statue that's been sandblasted and reset. The Romans swore by this part. The cold sealed the pores, sharpened the mind, and restored the humors, whatever that meant. Historians still argue whether the Frigidarium was about health, heroism, or just one last chance to prove you were tougher than your brother-in-law. You submerge up to your neck. The water is so cold, your teeth vibrate in Morse code. Across from you, a woman calmly reads a scroll, as if she isn't submerged in what feels like glacial runoff. You both nod in solidarity. She wins. On the far side of the room, a boy skitters along the edge, dipping one toe in with the caution of a squirrel, examining a puddle. His father watches with the tight-lipped pride of a man determined not to call it babying in public. As your body adjusts, miraculously, it begins to feel invigorating. The kind of cold that doesn't numb, but activates. You feel like you could run up the Palatine Hill, write an epic and still make it to dinner, and then, as quickly as you came in, you rise. Water streams off you in sheets, every drop somehow colder outside than in. An attendant hands you a rough linen towel, which might as well be made of sandpaper, but it's dry. You accept it like a blessing. You shuffle to a bench near the wall, trying not to drip on anyone's sandals. The sensation of warmth returning to your extremities is oddly thrilling. You feel alive, awakened, lightheaded in a way that feels earned. Someone nearby mutters that the Frigidarium is his favorite part. Reminds you you're mortal, he says, and then sneezes violently into his elbow. You notice a plaque on the wall, barely legible now, but said to be a dedication to the goddess Salus, patroness of health. It's decorated with vines, and what appears to be a cherub triumphantly holding a thermometer. You suspect that part might have been added later. One corner, a small brazier glows faintly, offering a last bit of heat for those who might regret their life choices. A teenager hovers near it, pretending not to shiver. His friends laugh, then join him anyway. Bravado only lasts so long. There's a certain solemnity here, too. The Frigidarium feels less social, more reflective. A place to cool not just the body but the mind. A thermal punctuation mark. You sit for a while, wrapped in linen, hair damp and skin humming. The world has gone quiet in a pleasant way. Even the marble seems to hum under your legs, like a cat purring in stone. You overhear a man explaining the concept of cold bathing to a visitor from the east. It resets the soul, he says, and shrinks the ego, if not the other bits. Eventually, an attendant gestures that it's time to move on. You rise, leaving behind a faint butt print on the bench and a small puddle shaped like a slightly embarrassed dolphin. One last chamber awaits. It won't steam or splash or sting. It will whisper, and it's the most secret room of all. You step softly into the sudatorium, and for a moment, you're not entirely sure where the walls end and the air begins. This is the whispering chamber of the Roman Bathhouse, the secret-keeping steam room that lies somewhere between a philosopher's dream and a lost rainforest. The moment you enter, your eyelashes fog, your skin, still tingling from the Frigidarium, instantly sighs. The moisture here is denser than in the Caldarium, less of a heat wave, more of a warm, sentient cloud that has decided to invite you in for a cuddle. It's quiet, not silent, no, but quiet in the way that makes your ears buzz. There's a hissing somewhere behind the walls, a soft drip, the subtle sound of breathing, and beneath all that, the sound of yourself, slowing down. The sudatorium isn't the most famous room in the Roman bathhouse, but it might be the most mystical. The heat here comes from beneath the floor, via the same hypocaust system, yes, but the steam is wetter, richer, fuller. Some say it was the Romans' best-kept secret for achieving what they referred to as contemplatio, a meditative state bordering on transcendence. Historians still argue whether the sudatorium had a formal ritual purpose, or if it was simply a nice place to lose track of time and forget your rent. Both might be true. You find a seat on a curved stone bench, still slick, but not unkind, and lean back, letting your eyes half close. A thin stream of vapor escapes from a brass vent. Nearby, as if the wall itself is exhaling in agreement. There are fewer people in here. Those who remain are quiet, alone or in pairs, rarely speaking, often lost in their own haze of thought. One man meditates with his palms upturned, as if waiting for an answer. A woman beside him hums a note over and over, like a lullaby for the bricks. You're not sure how long you sit there. Time here bends, not unlike the architecture, rounded, muted, softened at the edges. You remember something you overheard in the Apoditerium, that the Emperor Hadrian had a sudatorium built inside his villa, complete with a mosaic ceiling of dolphins chasing the moon. Supposedly, he would lie here for hours, dictating poetry between naps. You suspect this might be the origin of all great bureaucratic delays. An attendant drifts in like a ghost, barefoot, silent, and sprinkles a handful of herbs into a copper dish over the coals. The scent is instant. Rosemary, bay leaf, a whisper of mint. You breathe in. It's like inhaling history steeped in broth. You lean back again, letting the steam swaddle your shoulders, wrap around your knees, nuzzle your ears. The humidity curls into your hair, beads along your collarbones, and finds the ticklish spot behind your knee you'd forgotten existed. A soft thud. Someone has dozed off, and their sandal has hit the floor. No one moves to pick it up. You stretch your toes and think about nothing in particular. A rare gift. Of course, the Romans believed all of this had medical benefits. The Sudatorium was said to purge the humors, release the melancholy, and help treat wandering womb syndrome, a diagnosis that involved more imagination than evidence. Still, even now, you can't argue with results. You feel lighter, steamier, marginally more poetic. Across the room, a mosaic of Venus, rising from the sea, glistens with condensation. She's missing an arm, possibly due to time, possibly due to an argument about turnips. But she smiles all the same. There's a kind of serenity here, even in her fragmented form. Someone coughs gently. A child whispers a question you can't quite make out. The steam rolls on. You close your eyes. And somewhere in that warmth, the distinction between body and bench blurs. You begin to wonder if you've become part of the room, an extra stone block, damp and thoughtful. You wouldn't mind. Eventually, though, you must rise, gently, slowly, like a leaf being lifted from warm tea. You exit the Sudatorium, glowing, vaguely herb-scented, and just shy of hallucinating. The corridor ahead is darker, cooler, quieter. There's just one last experience waiting, a space where words return, whispers wander, and bodies recline once more together, but alone. The final stop on your journey through the Roman Bathhouse. You drift into the Tepidarium like a cloud that's lost its steam, but not its way. This room is the warm sigh between extremes. The air is neither cold nor hot, just perfectly in between, like a well-worn blanket that's been warmed by the sun after the sensory high drama of the Caldarium, Frigidarium, and Sudatorium. The Tepidarium feels like a gracious, extended exhale. Here, the architecture cradles you. Vaulted ceilings rise in lazy curves overhead. Mosaics in gentle colors tile the floor. Waves, vines, birds mid-flutter, all shimmering slightly in the mellow light that filters through high windows. The walls seem to sweat faintly with a sheen of condensation, like the skin of someone who's just had a nap they can't quite remember falling into. You settle onto a reclined bench of smooth stone, warmed from within by the Hippocaust system, still working like a Roman heart, murmuring beneath your body. It's not hot enough to shock you anymore, just warm enough to soften your spine, your muscles, and possibly your opinions on beats. Around you, others rest in similar poses. A few sit cross-legged, fiddling with jewelry or lightly oiled combs. Some murmur in low Latin, while others gaze into the middle distance with the unfocused eyes of people contemplating nothing or everything. You find yourself doing the same. The Tepidarium wasn't just a transitional space for the body. It was the social heart of the bathhouse. Here, Business deals were closed. Gossip was whispered. Poems shared. Marriages arranged. Treaties undermined. And shoes complimented or judged. One mosaic discovered in a bathhouse in Ostia actually shows two men in the Tepidarium shaking hands, possibly one of the world's earliest depictions of a business agreement. Both are naked, by the way. Contracts and clothing were not considered mutually necessary. You overhear two women quietly debating whether olive oil or goose fat is better for skin softness. A nearby man is demonstrating how he sprained his ankle, reenacting the fall of Troy at a dinner party. The audience nods solemnly. A few smile. Someone starts singing. Soft, aimless. A melody without destination. It threads through the air like incense. No one interrupts. This was where the sophronists, a sort of bathhouse etiquette enforcer, might walk slowly through the room, not to reprimand, necessarily, but to remind. No shouting, no aggressive towel snapping, no urinating in the hypocaust grates, no matter how funny your cousin thinks it is. The rules were simple. Be warm, be kind, be quiet. You shift positions and feel the stone underneath you hum ever so faintly, a gentle reminder. This place is alive in its own way. It breathes through pipes, exhales through vents, murmurs through moisture and conversation. On the far side, you spot a small alcove filled with terracotta oil jars. These are for the final part of the process, where an attendant or friend might anoint your skin with warmed oil and scrape away the residue with a strigil, not to clean you in the modern sense, but to reset you, to polish you down to your essential marble self. Historians still argue whether the Tepidarium was primarily for hygiene or for social hierarchy. Was it an equalizer of citizens, or a subtle stage for flexing your newest emerald ring? Probably both. A teenage boy in the corner is practicing a speech for what sounds like a rhetorical competition. He raises a finger, clears his throat, then forgets the next line. His friend hurls him a date from a pouch. It's unclear if that's encouragement or a bribe. Near the bench where you lie, a young woman sketches a floor plan into the condensation on the wall. It appears to be a reimagined bathhouse layout, but with more cats and fewer senators. You approve. Time passes here. In the slow, smooth way, honey slips down the side of a jar. You find your breathing slowing, your thoughts drifting again, lighter, now loosened from the angles of the day. Maybe this is what the Romans meant by balance. Or maybe you're just well cooked. Someone walks by, trailing sandal squeaks and a faint scent of myrrh. You barely notice. Outside, the light has begun to shift, signaling that the bathhouse is nearing its quietest hours. A faint bell sounds from somewhere deeper in the complex. Not a warning, just a note. Punctuation mark on the warm air. You rise, not quickly, not slowly, and move toward the final bench, along the curved wall. One last breath, one last bead of steam trailing down your temple. From here, the exit is near, but not yet. One final indulgence remains, the part the Romans never officially wrote down, but everyone knew: the art of doing absolutely, gloriously nothing. You have arrived at the final chamber of the Roman bathhouse experience, the Districtarium, where nothing much happens, and that's precisely the point. This is the place of scraping, oiling, and soft murmurs, a room where the warmest light filters down like liquid gold, and even the shadows seem too relaxed to stretch. Here, the pace slows to that perfect end-of-day drowsiness, like a cat deciding not to chase the moth after all. You lower yourself onto a polished slab, stone, but softened by use and by centuries of elbow grease. Beside you stands a wiry attendant with a strigil in one hand and a small pot of scented oil in the other. He raises an eyebrow as if to say, "Shall we?" And before you can nod, he's already begun. First, the oil, poured from a narrow-necked vessel. It dribbles over your skin in warm, glistening streaks. Not too hot, just enough to make you exhale in something close to bliss. It smells faintly of rosemary and crushed laurel, with a hint of, is that cardamom? Possibly, or maybe just the lingering perfume of everyone who's passed through before. The oil is massaged in gently, not for relaxation exactly, but to prepare the skin. Then, the strigil, a curved metal blade, slightly blunt, expertly drawn over your arms, shoulders, back, legs. It scrapes away the day. Sweat, oil, dust, regrets, all gone in the long, practiced arcs. The sensation is somewhere between exfoliation and gentle mockery. Not painful, but definitely assertive, like being polished by a disappointed uncle who wants you to look presentable for the gods. Across the room, others are undergoing the same ritual. Some laugh softly at the ticklish bits. Others close their eyes as if this is the moment they've been waiting for. A few scrape themselves, self-destruction being perfectly acceptable among the less wealthy or the fiercely independent. Historians still argue whether the destrictarium was used primarily by the elite or whether even the humblest citizen could expect a good scraping on a good day. What's clear is that this final step wasn't just physical, it was symbolic, the removal of the day's layer, a return to oneself. You glance down and notice the floor, a little grimy with oil and residue, but sloped toward a discreet drain. The Romans thought of everything. Even your filth had a destiny. You ask the attendant about the strigil. He holds it up with a certain reverence. Bronze, he says, passed down from his father, used on senators, gladiators, and one man who claimed to be the emperor's foot poet. He smelled like figs, the attendant adds, unprompted. You thank him. He shrugs modestly, already moving to clean the tool for the next bathgoer. You recline for a moment longer, letting the oil sit on your now smooth skin. You feel unburdened, like a candle that has melted to its purest form. The aches have faded, the thoughts have thinned. Even your knees feel oddly optimistic. Around you, the room continues in its quiet rituals. A child is having his first scraping. He giggles, then shrieks, then laughs again. His mother rolls her eyes, but smiles. A man nearby is waxing poetic about the meaning of cleanliness in Stoic philosophy. His companion nods politely, very possibly asleep. And still, the scraping continues. The destrictarium also served another purpose, to allow people to observe each other, now fully relaxed, no longer posturing. There's an intimacy here that goes beyond the physical. You've sweated beside these people, frozen beside them, steamed, and now shined. The barriers have melted. You are all, briefly, citizens not of Rome, but of rest. And then, a bell, low, mellow, time. The bathhouse does not close with a clang. It softens its edges, dims its flames, and lets you go gently. You sit up, swing your feet down, and press them to the floor. Warm just barely. One final linen towel is offered. You take it, wrap it around your shoulders, and breathe. The air smells different now. Less oil, more stone, the scent of the end of things. You glance once more at the room before you leave. The gleam of strigils, the low laughter, the wall mosaics, where dolphins leap eternally through golden waves. Outside this room, the world waits, but you don't have to go there quite yet. First, one more place, not a chamber exactly, not even marked on a map, but every Roman knew it. The place where you sat in silence, skin warm, limbs languid, heart slow, the place of nothingness, the last and loveliest stop, the lounging bench. You find it without being told. The bench, the niche, the shadowed alcove, call it what you like. Every Roman bathhouse had one, or many. No name carved into stone, no formal designation, just a place to sit and then not sit, to half recline, half dream, and wholly disappear into your own slightly oiled skin. This is where you go when everything else is done. And you are, you realize, done. Scraped, steamed, dunked, daubed, and dried. You've journeyed through fire and ice, well, tepid water and gently murmuring ducks. But still, it feels epic, heroic, even, like Odysseus, if he'd taken a nap. Halfway through the Cyclops incident, the stone bench beneath you is gently curved and unreasonably comforting. Draped in clean linen, it seems to lift you slightly, like it's proud of you. Around you, others are draped similarly, half mummified in towels, blinking slowly at nothing. One woman is eating a fig with all the drama of an opera finale. A man across from her is polishing his toe ring with a look of divine concentration. These are the post-bath humans, soft, vulnerable, serene, like dumplings that forgot to be served. The light is different here too, dim but golden. Dust floats like time in suspension. You notice how quiet it's become. No more sandals slapping, or water lapping, or debates about the virtues of imported myrrh. Just breathing. The gentle whisper of a linen shifting. The sigh of someone realizing they don't have to be anywhere for quite some time. This, historians suggest, might be the true purpose of the bathhouse. Not cleansing, not politics, not even poetry, but this moment, the nothing after everything. You lean your head back and think of how far you've come. From the crowded Epiditarium, where strangers eyed your sandals, through the architectural drama of the Caldarium, the icy gasp of the Frigidarium, the whispered mist of the Sudatorium, and the unhurried rhythm of the Tepidarium. You have emerged not just cleaner, but simpler, lighter. You're not sure where your sandals are, and honestly, you don't mind. The woman next to you murmurs something about honey cakes. Her friend nods solemnly. A pact has been made, possibly involving dessert. Another man appears to be composing a haiku. If haikus had been invented yet, a child crawls under a bench to retrieve a marble and decides to stay there for a while. No one objects. This room isn't about action, it's about being. And for Romans, being was an art. You didn't just finish something and move on. You lingered. You eased into silence, the way a swimmer floats to the surface and lets the waves carry them home. You stretch slightly, just enough to feel how every limb responds like a well-tuned lyre. The oil still lingers faintly on your skin, catching the light, giving you the shimmer of a well-rested statue. Across the room, a servant places a pitcher of water and a small tray of dried apricots on a low table. The water sweats gently. The apricots glow like treasure. No one rushes. These will still be there in 5 minutes, or 50. Historians still debate whether this lounge area had any formal name or ritual. Was it tied to the idea of odium, the Roman concept of leisure as a virtue? Or was it just a necessary afterthought, somewhere to let the oil sink in? The answer, of course, is both. Because leisure wasn't just permitted, it was sacred. A well-spent hour here was as noble as any battle, any scroll read, any statue unveiled. And so you stay, for minutes, for maybe an hour. Time ceases to be a sequence and becomes a scent, a texture, a warm patch on your leg that shifts just slightly with the sunbeam. Eventually, you know you'll rise, redrape your toga or tunic, retrieve your sandals, wander back into the city with your skin glowing and your heart strangely weightless. But for now, you just breathe. The world can wait. You've been to every corner of the Roman Bathhouse, and somehow, this humble bench may be the most profound of them all. Because here, for a rare and precious moment, you are absolutely, gloriously unbothered. You stand, eventually, not because you want to, more because the bench seems to gently release you, as if sensing you've steeped long enough. Your joints feel like they've been marinated in serenity. Your skin hums with residual heat and olive oil. Even your eyebrows feel relaxed. There's no hurry, of course. The Roman bathhouse is allergic to haste, but you wander now through a quieter corridor, away from the great rooms of steam and splash. These halls are less adorned, simple, almost humble, yet still lovely in that worn stone, ever so slightly crumbling way only ancient places can be. You're heading toward the final part of your visit, not a place of water or marble, but of fabric, of fragrances, of choices, the unctorium. Ah, yes, the perfume room. You step inside, and the air changes. It no longer smells like steam or stone or mineral-rich aqueducts. It smells like crushed petals, almond paste, aged honey, musk, and ambition. Tiny oil lamps flicker in copper niches, and their light dances over shelves of amphorae, flasks, and delicate glass bottles, each one holding some carefully concocted Roman scent. You're greeted by an unctors, a perfumer slash masseur slash alchemist, draped in soft linen and smelling faintly of cinnamon. They give you a once-over, not judgmentally, but analytically. Then they make a soft and reach for a greenish flask shaped like a peacock, promising. The oil is dabbed along your collarbones, behind your ears, on your wrists. It smells like crushed violets, aged pine resin, and something intriguingly bitter, perhaps wormwood. You smell both expensive and mysterious, like someone who might casually quote Catullus and then win a foot race. This wasn't just for vanity. Romans believed scent had power, social, spiritual, even medical. Some oils claimed to protect against illness. Others claimed to make you irresistible, or at least interesting at dinner parties. Cleopatra was said to sail into harbors on ships perfumed so heavily that townspeople could smell her long before she arrived. Talk about brand strategy. Your attendant offers you a shallow bowl of perfumed water to rinse your hands. It smells like rose water and aloe. You dip your fingers, watching the ripples catch the lamplight. It feels ceremonial, like the closing credits of your bathing adventure. The unctorium is also where you choose your final garment. Your towel is gently taken and replaced with something softer, lighter, perhaps a fresh tunic, perhaps a clean toga, all pressed, all faintly warmed. The Romans did not believe in re-entering the world in anything wrinkled. Historians still argue how many types of oils and perfumes were used daily, and whether these luxuries were reserved for the rich or also available to the wider public. The evidence is mixed. Fancy amphorae in elite villas, but also mass-produced oil jars found in urban garbage heaps. Everyone, it seems, liked to smell nice, or at least better than their neighbor. The Youngtors adds one last touch, a dab of myrrh at your temples, to sharpen the mind, they say, with a wink that suggests it might also help you remember who borrowed your favorite goblet. You glance around one last time. The perfumes gleam like colored glass candies on their shelves. There's a sweet, herbal fog in the air. Someone hums softly. It could be a hymn, or just a tune they like. Either way, it fits. You thank your attendant. They nod, already moving on to the next guest, who's loudly insisting they need something, more lemony, like victory. You step back into the hallway. You are clean. You are rested. You are lightly glowing. You are also delicately perfumed in ways that make you feel like a statue in a temple or a very expensive cake. As you walk toward the exit, the scent clings to you, mixing with the faint steam still lingering in your pores, the warmth in your bones, and the absurd joy of knowing your body is now in harmony with every heated tile and whispered conversation you've passed through today. And still, the bathhouse is not quite finished with you, because beyond the perfumes, past the corridor of dry sandals and draped curtains, there lies one more experience, one final chamber of mystery, a room some called sacred, others called unnecessary. You may soon call your favorite, the barber shop. You weren't planning on getting a trim. You really weren't. But here you are, drawn like a very well-moisturized moth to a flame, stepping through the beaded curtain into the Tonstrina, the Roman Bathhouse's resident barber shop, or to be more precise, a cross between a barber shop, gossip hub, and lightly theatrical performance space. The air smells faintly of lye soap and lavender. Low benches line the walls, and above them, burnished bronze mirrors catch flickers of lamplight. You spot a man with half a beard shaved, mid-argument with a teenager holding a razor, while another customer gestures wildly with a face full of foam demanding the latest political rumors. You perch on a stool near the back. The barber, bald, wiry, and radiating an energy somewhere between Socrates and a sarcastic uncle, eyes you like a sculptor sizing up a particularly promising block of marble. "Just to tidy up?" he asks, already rolling up his sleeves. And before you can respond, your head is gently tilted back, and the process begins. First, the lather. It smells of olive oil and laurel, applied with a brush made from boar hair. The foam tickles a little, and the barber chuckles softly. "Shaves better if you're laughing," he says. Then, the blade, a short, curved knife, with a wicked glint, but surprisingly tender in the hands of someone who's done this thousands of times. You barely feel the touch, just the soft pull of hair being uninvited. Roman barbers were more than mere stylists. They were part therapist, part town crier, part debate moderator. This particular one informs you that yesterday, a senator's nephew slipped on olive oil in the Tepidarium, and now claims to have invented a new dance. You nod solemnly, because what else can you do? Nearby, a child is getting his first shave. He looks terrified. His father, wearing the smuggest expression available in the Western Empire, films the moment with his eyes, clearly ready to retell this story for decades. There's also a woman having her eyebrows plucked. Yes, Roman barbers served both men and women. Fashion was, as always, fluid, and in this age, a unibrow might make or break your social standing. Some people even glued mouse fur to enhance their look. No, really, historians still argue whether this was common practice or just the height of eccentric vanity. Your barber trims a little hair behind your ears, flicks away the clippings with a cloth, then steps back, admiring his work. "Now you're ready to be seen," he says, "or avoided, if that's more your style." You grin. He produces a small flask of aftershave, essentially more oil, this time scented with fennel and marjoram. It burns slightly, then soothes. Looking around, you realize the Tanstrina isn't just a grooming stop. It's the bathhouse's final social flourish, the cool down to the cool down. Here, people re-enter society slowly, face first. Arguments about grain taxes fade into critiques of beard symmetry. A man behind you is loudly debating the best gladiator of the season, while someone else quietly recites a love poem with alarming intensity to the barber's assistant. You ask your barber if he's ever shaved a consul. "Twice," he says. "One sneezed, the other cried." You don't ask which was better. You leave the chair, face smooth, scalp light, heart a bit fuller than expected. A mirror is held up for you. You look strangely magnificent, like someone who could win an oratory contest by just blinking, or at least get a second fig for free. The barber hands you a piece of dried citrus peel to chew on, breath freshener, Roman style, and waves you off with the air of a man who has transformed yet another weary soul into a social masterpiece. You exit the Tanstrina, feeling not just groomed, but somehow polished from the inside out, like a sentence that's finally found its last word. The corridor ahead leads toward the atrium, and beyond that, the street. But you pause. There's one more custom yet, a moment as old as the bathhouses themselves. The parting libation, because no Roman bath is truly complete without a good drink. Of course you're thirsty. You've been steamed, scraped, slathered, rinsed, reclined, perfumed, and polished. If your pores were any more open, birds would nest in them. So, yes, water sounds nice. Maybe wine. Maybe something in between. And the Romans naturally have just the thing. You follow the sound. Gentle clinks, soft laughter, the unmistakable slosh of amphorae being tipped at precisely the right angle. It draws you to the scola, small gardened courtyard or annex tucked into the outer fringes of the bathhouse. Not every bathhouse had one, but the best certainly did, and you, as luck would have it, are in one of the best. It's open to the sky, this space. Vines climb lazy columns, and the paving stones are warm with the memory of sunlight. Low tables are scattered around, attended by sleepy-eyed staff who move like they've already had their own bath and haven't quite returned to full consciousness. You find a seat near a small fountain shaped like a lion dribbling water from its chin. Someone brings a cup, a simple clay vessel, smooth and pleasantly cool to the touch. Inside, a light drink, diluted wine, faintly flavored with honey and herbs, just enough to soften the tongue, not enough to trip over it. This is the Roman version of a post-spa spritz. Next to you, a trio of older men are gently arguing about whether Galen or Hippocrates had the better bedside manner. A woman 2 benches over is nibbling on almonds and dictating a love letter to her slave scribe. The letter, you notice, includes 3 metaphors involving figs, and at least one about a falcon. She is not, to be clear, pulling any punches. You take a sip. It tastes like the past. Romans often drank their wine cut with water. Drinking it straight was considered barbaric and a bit of a faux pas unless you were mid-festival or mid-meltdown. They might add herbs, like thyme, or even seawater. If they were feeling bold, you're grateful your version is more lavender than brine. A small tray arrives. Dried fruits, a wedge of soft cheese, a dish of olives so perfectly briny they might rewrite your understanding of salt. You nibble, slowly. Your jaw moves less, out of hunger and more out of ritual. This is how you anchor yourself after all that floating. Whether this libation ritual was officially part of the bathhouse experience or a delightful postscript, evidence suggests both. Writings describe casual wine service and gardens adjacent to major baths. Mosaics show diners reclining in towels, but it's also possible that some of this was improvised, an elegant sprawl of social habits that wrapped themselves around the bath culture, like ivy on stone. A man nearby begins singing softly, a love ballad about a girl who ran off with a baker. The tune is terrible. The sentiment is flawless. Another joins in, badly. You briefly consider harmonizing, then wisely decide to sip more wine instead. Your muscles have now entered a phase beyond relaxation. You're in post-relaxation, the realm of philosophical slouching. Your thoughts come slower, but more lovingly. Everything around you feels both ancient and immediate, like you're suspended in a golden liquid that may or may not contain oregano. Someone clinks their cup against yours in passing. No words, just a shared smile. You nod, feeling like a Roman, at the very top of their leisure game. And yet, even here, you realize this wasn't about indulgence for its own sake. This wasn't just luxury. It was, in its own strange way, medicine, daily maintenance for the Roman soul, and maybe for yours too, because after all that scrubbing and sweating and steeping, this cup, this quiet, this moment of pleasant nothing is the final rinse, the last warm breath of the bathhouse, melting into your bloodstream and whispering, "You made it. You're still here, and you are freshly, splendidly human." You set your cup down. The olives are mostly gone. The fountain burbles with patient joy. You feel like you could sit here forever if the sun didn't eventually set and the world beyond the walls didn't gently tug at your hem. But first, before you go, there's one last tradition to explore. No towel required, because some Romans, after the baths, had one more stop, a visit to the resident philosopher. You rise slowly from your stone bench, legs a little loose, arms pleasantly heavy. Your whole body has gone pleasantly unfocused, like a watercolor painting left out in a spring drizzle. Still, there's a sense of gentle curiosity pulling you forward. One last corner of the bathhouse experience you've yet to explore. You follow a narrow passage, one flanked by terracotta pots full of mint and rosemary. The scent alone feels like a thoughtful nudge. Wake up the mind, but just a little. At the end of the passage is a small portico. A man, wiry, bearded, draped in a clean but thoroughly unimpressive tunic, sits on a stone bench, quietly slicing figs with a small, blunt knife. This, as it happens, is your philosopher. The Philosophus Balnearius, or bath philosopher, was not a formal position, per se, more of a recurring character. Think less Socrates with a robe, more neighborhood uncle with too much time and an opinion on everything. Some Roman baths were known to host these characters as a kind of cerebral palate cleanser, less about answers, more about perspective. You sit down beside him. He doesn't look at you, just holds out a slice of fig. You take it, and just like that, the conversation begins. Wordless, slow, and strangely electric. "Did you know?" he says eventually, in a voice so quiet it barely disturbs the air, "that Zeno believed time was an illusion, that everything happening now has already always happened?" You nod, chewing. You're not sure if the fig is ripe, or your brain is just too relaxed to care. Either way, it's working. He asks what part of the bath you liked best. You mention the hot room, the scrape, the scent of violets, and ambition. He nods solemnly. "A good scrape can erase a bad week," he murmurs. The two of you fall into a rhythm. Quiet exchanges, long silences, fig slices, passed like incense. He quotes Seneca at one point, only to immediately undercut it by wondering aloud if Seneca would have made a decent pie crust. You laugh, unexpectedly. He beams, as if that were the actual point all along. Historians still argue whether these bathhouse philosophers were real figures or just exaggerated anecdotes from Roman satire. Juvenal makes sarcastic mention of them. Martial gives them rhyming jabs. But enough fragments remain to suggest there were indeed thinkers who used the bathhouse as both audience and stage. Whether licensed or just persistent. Here, your philosopher seems content to play both clown and oracle. He tells you that clean feet make sharper decisions, that Marcus Aurelius never passed up a cold plunge. That existence itself might be a bit overrated, except for dates and dogs. You nod again, not necessarily in agreement, but in appreciation of the sheer, unhurried absurdity of it all. A child walks past and hands him a fig leaf like it's currency. He accepts it gravely and places it atop his head. Crown of momentary wisdom, he says, expires in about 2 bites. The moment feels strange, precious, almost holy in its silliness. He leans back, sighs, and says, "Baths remind us. We're not as clever as we think, but we can smell better. And really, who can argue with that? You sit a while longer, long enough to forget the time, long enough to feel your thoughts slow to the rhythm of a fig slice, being carved, passed, eaten, and forgotten. The philosopher doesn't ask for anything, doesn't expect applause. He just hums a little tune, one that might be older than the empire itself. Finally, he stands, stretches like a cat who's read too much Aristotle, and says, "Time to go. Remind the world it's ridiculous." You watch him shuffle away, one sandal squeaking slightly, and feel something quietly settle in your chest, not understanding exactly, just a sense that things might not need understanding to be wonderful. You rise, dust imaginary crumbs from your tunic, and begin the slow return down the vine-scented path. The final stretch before the bathhouse releases you fully back into the world. There's just one more moment waiting, a breath before goodbye, the crossing of the threshold, and a final look back. You make your way back toward the entrance, your steps slower now, not just from exhaustion, but from something more elusive, reverence maybe, or reluctance, the kind that comes when you've been somewhere your body has remembered for you. The atrium is quieter than before. The crowds have thinned. The laughter now a soft memory echoing in the corridors. Even the ever-chatty barbers have fallen into a rare lull. Somewhere, a broom is being lazily pushed across mosaic tiles. More for the ritual than the result. You pause by the massive stone threshold, where you first stepped in hours ago, though time now feels suspiciously nonlinear, like maybe you left in several pieces and came back in better order. There's a final custom some Romans observed here at the end of their bathhouse stay. A moment of reflection, a sort of mental towel-off. Not official, just understood. You take it now. One last breath of perfumed air. One last glance at the marble pillars and faint, lingering curls of steam. You feel scrubbed clean, not just on the outside, but somewhere murkier, somewhere usually ignored during your daily Roman errands. Your ceremonial grumbling at the price of lentils, your suspicion that your neighbor's rooster is mocking you specifically. You remember the scrape of the strigil, the bizarre dignity of the communal toilet, the flash of absurdity as someone sang an off-key ballad while slathered in oil. And then, of course, your fig-slicing philosopher, somehow both nonsense and necessity. There was a rhythm to it all, not just to the spaces and sounds, but to how each part led gently into the next. The heat softened you, the scrape shed you, the soak suspended you, and the talk reshaped you. It wasn't just hygiene, It was a gentle disassembly and reassembly of the self. And now, as the cool outdoor air brushes your cheeks like a friend's farewell pat, you understand something strange and wonderful. The bathhouse has always been less about bathing and more about being. Historians still argue whether these daily visits were truly universal or a luxury for the wealthier classes. Certainly, not every Roman could afford the time or coin. But in this moment, that debate feels distant. You were here. You breathed the eucalyptus. You listened to the sighs. You let yourself be part of a ritual older than empire. Outside, the sky has changed. The sun has dropped lower, tossing long shadows like spears across the cobblestones. Somewhere, a fruit seller calls out, and a donkey answers rudely. Life continues, unapologetically. You adjust your cloak, now smelling faintly of bay leaves and someone else's soap. You are not different in any grand way. No celestial truth has been handed to you, but you are a little more you than before, and that's enough. You take the step over the threshold and into the street. A puff of dust rises where your sandal hits the ground. The city greets you again, not with fanfare, but with the quiet confidence of knowing it has waited. Behind you, the baths stand like a dream. You're still half in. Ahead, the world is ready. You walk, no rush. Let the dust cling. Let the oils linger. Let the memory warm your bones. Because tomorrow, if fortune favors you, you'll return, and the baths will be there again, waiting to welcome you back into the steam. And now, as your thoughts drift gently with the warmth of that final breath inside the Roman baths, you feel the edges of the world start to soften. The crisp lines of marble fade into watercolor. Voices become whispers, and the air, still scented faintly with herbs and history, begins to slow your mind. Picture yourself reclining once more in that silent corner of the Frigidarium, the cool stone supporting you like memory itself. Your fingers rest lightly, your shoulders unburdened. Outside, the hum of the city pulses faintly, but here, only stillness. You are no longer thinking of errands, or conversations, or the weight of time. Instead, you are floating gently on the surface of a moment, too old to rush. A place where the very walls breathe with centuries, and every drop of water carries stories, told and retold beneath the steam. Even your heartbeat has joined the rhythm of the past. Slow, steady, content, let the stone remain cool beneath you. Let the breeze carry away what no longer needs holding. Let the scent of oil and ash and laughter wrap around you like a familiar blanket. There is nothing to chase here, nothing to fix, only rest, only calm, only the echo of water, and the long, soft hush of the world exhaling beside you. Sleep well, traveler, and when you wake, the bathhouse will still be there, just waiting to begin again. Sweet dreams.